From their newfound respect for Tom Christie after his surprising confession, to feeling iffy about Roger and Bree helping Wendigo Donner, here's how fans reacted to Outlander Season 7's return. On June 16, 2023, the Starz historical drama came back with a bang, reintroducing some of our favorite old characters and tying up some remaining loose ends. After that action-packed finale from Season 6, there were plenty of cliffhangers just begging for some closure. And in true Outlander fashion, the new season exceeded all of the fans' expectations. Episode 1 was a roller coaster ride, and it came with much-needed developments. One of the best things to come out of it was undoubtedly Tom Christie's redemption arc. Fans all over Reddit were just amazed at how the writers handled his character, and it was all because of how Tom offered his freedom up for Claire. Sure, he had his reasons for it. If you go back to Season 5, we know that Jamie had accepted the role as an Indian agent for the Crown, only so that it wouldn't have gone to Brown. This meant that Jamie had to be super careful around the British, but when Christie confessed to the murder of his own daughter Malva, he effectively let our main man off the hook. If Tom hadn't done that, then Governor Martin would have made Jamie gather his soldiers for the British, in exchange for Claire's freedom. But when Tom confessed, this allowed Mr. Fraser to get out of the whole situation unscathed, because there was no way he was going to gather forces for the British considering his past with them. Christie owning up to Malva's murder also allowed Jamie to not publicly side with the revolution. And this was important, because his loyalties were already put to the test considering his friendship with Lord John Grey, who obviously would have sided with the Crown. But knowing our lover boy, Claire's safety was the only thing that mattered. So when Tom Christie stepped in, this meant Claire was no longer in a position to be used as a bargaining chip by Governor Martin to torment Jamie, and you best believe fans loved every bit of it. But even after he confessed, Malva's actual killer is still at large, and that's when things take a wild turn. Just like the books, Tom also came clean about how Malva wasn't actually his daughter, but was in fact his niece, and his comments about her slyness convinced many of us that the girl was actually a witch. Now, neither Jamie nor Claire thought Tom was the killer, and since he offered himself as leverage for their safety on their trip out of Fraser's Ridge in Season 6, the pair knew that he'd just taken the blame on himself so that they could avoid being axed. A fan on Reddit even pointed out how Tom Christie's scenes reminded them of Sidney Carton in A Tale of Two Cities. His redemption arc was the epitome of self-sacrifice with purpose and determination, and while it was sad, it was also very impactful. That said, despite trading in his freedom, the fact that the writers still chose not to make Malva's killer's identity known is an interesting choice. In the books, her death is a lot more tragic, with her half-brother Alan abusing her for years and also being her unborn baby's father. So maybe this was a deliberate choice by the writers not to go too dark just yet. Even some fans weren't convinced that Tom was the actual killer and knew there was something fishy about the way even Jamie and Claire didn't believe him. One fan, who's only followed the show, pointed out that since Alan is blood and Malva was only half-blood, it made sense for Alan to be the killer. Because remember, Tom mentioned blood, and right now all clues point to him. Fans are also relieved that the Season 7 premiere has ended the Browns' feud with the Frasers. Ever since Season 5, these two have been at each other's throats. Lionel Brown's hatred for Claire is as historic as it gets, and he genuinely despises everything that she stands for. After Marcelly kills him as retribution for abducting and assaulting Claire in the Season 5 finale, Lionel's brother, Richard, makes it his life's mission to make the Frasers pay for it. In fact, he essentially promises Jamie that he will avenge his brother's blood. And this is why his whole smear campaign against Claire in Season 6 was extremely vicious. Because even though his motives for revenge were personal, he had then involved the entire village too, which caused further problems for Jamie and Claire. At the end of Episode 1, after the chaos that unfolded, when Jamie confronted Richard Brown with every intention of killing him off, he'd gotten sick and tired of Brown's antics, especially since he tried to put Jamie on a ship back to Scotland to separate him from Claire. Because if there's one thing that's consistent throughout the show, then it's the fact that there's absolutely nothing that can come in between these two lovers, and if Brown thought he'd be the first one to succeed in that endeavor, then boy, was he wrong. Whether Jamie will actually actually kill Richard as he promised is still up in the air for now, and even fans were confused if Brown's actually dead. Some even called it Schrodinger's Brown, while others were sure that Jamie's actually killed him. And the only reason the show ended with a cliffhanger was because of its long-standing history of torturing fans with twists. A group of fans on Reddit also gushed over how the last scene of the episode was a treat to watch, when Brown tells Jamie that he's a good and moral man. Jamie, being Jamie, retorts back, saying that he's also a violent man. And guys, if that isn't a great line, then I don't know what is. One fan even recalled how their jaw dropped hearing that, and all they could think about was younger Jamie and everything that he had gone through, all the way up to that point, because this meant that Red Jamie had finally arrived. And I've gotta say, Sam Heughan did a brilliant job making Jamie so intimidating in that scene. Unlike the previous season, Season 7 has shown promise so far. According to a lot of fans online, the writers did a beautiful job of hitting each and every plot point from the books. And this is just the beginning of the season. Tom Christie's confession to Claire was not only heartbreaking, but it made many people tear up as well. Though there was also a majority that felt like the shift in his character was rather odd, and him professing his love for Claire caught them off guard. But if you go back to Season 6, Tom's always been subtle about his love for Claire, so his confession actually makes a lot of sense. Many people even thought that the episode should have been the Season 6 finale instead, because of how many loose ends it tied up, and that they're excited to see how the story unfolds. The only problem that most people had with the episode was with Wendigo Donner, though. Now, if you haven't read the books, then this might be a spoiler for you, but for context, it's super important. So, in Season 4, Brianna travels back in time to warn Claire and Jamie about a fire that destroys Fraser's Ridge. In the books, that fire is set by time traveler Wendigo Donner, because he's on this big quest to find a gemstone so he can return to his own time. Now, in the Season 7 premiere, Donner tells Roger that he already has the gemstone to travel through the stones. But the only problem was that he apparently had to fight for the British because he was in jail, and that meant he couldn't make his trip back home. Obviously, this doesn't really mean that Wendigo would lose the gemstone altogether, but for some reason, his whole arc in the episode just confused fans even more. I mean, it wasn't the character anyone had major issues with. It was more about the fact that Bree and Roger had this whole conflict over helping him. Fans of the book series thought that this particular part was maybe written exclusively for the show, and that was why they had a hard time figuring out Wendigo's true motives. A fan on Reddit even tried to connect the dots to make sense of the situation. They said that it was odd that Roger said he was going to help Wendigo by praying for him, despite the fact that he traveled through time to help protect his fellow indigenous people, stave off the Western expansion, and prevent forced religion. So, the fact that he quite literally risked his life, only to be met with a reaction like this from Bree and Roger, is a little insulting to say the least. I mean, we know Roger was never proud of what he'd witnessed in the past, so maybe that's why he wanted to help Wendigo. But at the same time, Bree would have probably never accepted that, since she blamed him for helping Claire, so it was all just really conflicting to watch at the end of the day. So, from feeling iffy about Roger and Bree helping Wendigo Donner, to their newfound respect for Tom Christie after his surprising confession. That was how fans reacted to Outlander Season 7's return.